don't need people who have reported. It doesn't matter to us if charges, none of that matters. If you self-identify as a victim, call us and you can find support.
At no cost?
No cost. No insurance, no nothing. If you need an interpreter to join the group, it's no cost. We're happy to do it.
Hi, and welcome to TLC Connections podcast. My name's Julie Knutson. I'll be your host today. I'm the Director of Development here at the Lincoln Center, and it's my privilege and excitement to have Erin Milbourne with us here today. Erin Milbourne is a licensed clinical social worker and serves as the Direct Services Supervisor at the Victim Services Center of Montgomery County, the county's only nonprofit comprehensive agency providing free and confidential support to survivors of crime and their loved ones. In her role, Erin leads the Direct Services team offering trauma-informed counseling, advocacy, including hospital, police, and court accompaniment, hotline crisis response, and specialized support groups, including a virtual support group for survivors of gun violence, which she helped to implement. Under her supervision, Victim Services launched outreach campaigns such as countywide bilingual billboard signage to let victims know they are not alone and there is no cost for services. So welcome, Erin. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And I do have to say, we have worked together and crossed paths for many years.
Yeah.
My roles have changed. Yours probably within the agency have.
Right.
But I want to start with what keeps you so passionate and engaged and committed to this work?
So when I think about that question, I always come back just to purpose. For me, it feels like just purpose for me. I've felt like I wanted to be a social worker since the 7th grade. When I interviewed a lady named Mrs. Hamlin, I just knew she was a social worker. And I said, that's what I want to do. And so it kind of weaved my way and found myself at Victim Services about 18 years ago. And I would say maybe my vision has kind of shifted over the last 18 years, but the passion remains the same. Sometimes I think I might be crazy staying in the field, but I just feel like that is the purpose, and I'm just here to stay on mission and on task.
So can you expand on that? Like, what drives you? How do you feed that purpose? Like,
I think when I see change in clients' lives, when I see people move from maybe a space of true brokenness to, I'm not going to say true healing or full healing, but when we see movement, it fills me up. When I see new social workers and they kind of become passionate and do really good work, it fills me up. When I'm able to implement any kind of change, whether it's policy, whether it's something just within our county, it keeps me going, because there's never going to be a time when I'm like, okay, everything's completed. So I think that keeps me, I know there's so much work to be done.
So it sounds like also the innovation that you're afforded. Yeah. So there's things I touched on here, and I'd like to hear more about that, like your gun violence virtual group, or tell me a little bit even how the process with that.
Yeah. So Victim Services, we serve sexual assault and all other crimes. So we've run numerous groups for survivors of sexual assault, adult survivors of childhood abuse. And it's kind of transformed over time. It's hard, probably, as you know, to get folks in the room or on the screen because it's sensitive topics, whether it's sexual violence, whether it's homicide, whether it's gun violence, whether it is young survivors. It's very challenging. We have all the ideas. It's hard to get the people motivated because it's a scary situation to talk about any kind of violence. So I think there is a different dynamic. There's a community element because oftentimes the people we meet are in isolation, and we can do therapy, which is great. But I know the one thing without a shadow of a doubt is community and support. You cannot heal if you don't have that. So while group is really important, and I know it is, you have to sort of get clients motivated and feeling safe to get to that space. So I'm proud to say our groups have been running. It's hard to kind of get momentum, but we're in the process. Like right now, we're doing an adult survivor, a grief through the holidays. Those are the two, and a young adults group. And it has its own challenges. It's challenges of gathering people and being consistent.
So how do you even identify the topics? And how many different groups do you have?
So Really, if there's a community need, if I notice, okay, that we're working with a number of homicide families, then, we'll just ask point blank, would it be helpful? Would you be interested? And we kind of gather a list, an ongoing list really throughout the year. And once it reaches a certain point, we will do outreach and say, hey, we think we have enough people. Would this be something you're interested? The groups that are most active is definitely adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Unfortunately, those numbers are huge. And so we always have people that want to participate in that. The challenging groups are gun violence, male survivors, homicide. I think because of, social norms, people feeling like, is this a space for me? That's been challenging to get folks to join and be consistent.
But they will receive services individually?
Individual is always an option. Group is just sort of the next component if we can offer it.
And so anybody listening, or myself to know, the adult survivors of sexual abuse, can anybody join?
Anyone can join. As long as they're in the state of Pennsylvania, because we do them now virtually, which is just the way that most folks, want to participate, just because it limits some of the barriers, travel, time, constraints, things like that. So as long as they're in the state of Pennsylvania, they can reach out to our hotline and say, hey, can I be added to that group, this group? And then
do they need a police report? Do they have to demonstrate?
We don't need people who have reported. It doesn't matter to us if charges, none of that matters. If you self-identify as a victim, call us and you can find support.
At no cost?
No cost. No insurance, no nothing. If you need an interpreter to join the group, it's no cost. We're happy to do it.
So who funds it?
So the state, right? So we are federal dollars.
Yeah.
Are what funds our agency.
And you'll do some fundraisers, I know.
We'll do fundraisers. We are always looking for donors. I mean, that's kind of the big push, but certainly,
That's amazing. So no financial barriers at all.
No barriers. So we don't care about immigration status, insurance, none of that. We don't ask any of that.
And how do people know about you? Where do most of your referrals come from?
Yeah. So we get a number of referrals from our 52 police departments. So some of them are really engaged with us. And so typically, if an officer goes out to a crime scene, whether it's a robbery, a burglary, an assault, they will get them a packet of information. And it's sort of like a permission slip, as though you signed your kid to go to the museum. Yes, victim services, we give permission that they can call us. They come to me every day and we do outreach. So a victim of a burglary last night will get a report on my desk and I'll do outreach. I'll call and introduce who we are. We have these free services. Would that be helpful? And a lot of times those folks are interested. The other way we get clients are from schools. We're in doing a lot of prevention education. So many times it's students or parents. And then the other one is hospitals. So the big ones would be Abington, Lankenau, Bryn Mawr, Pottstown somewhat. But basically the ERs there, if someone shows up and they're a victim of sexual assault and they want to get evidence collection or a kit done, they automatically, that nurse would call us and we go out in person for those calls just because we don't want people to be alone. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure they're supported. You have a safety plan. What do you need from us going forward? So we also can extend services to those folks. So I would say police, hospital, and schools are the biggest sources of referral, but certainly people just Google and word of mouth. Certain communities, that's probably where we get some clients is just, hey, go over there, they can help.
So I would imagine, I have seen you in the community. It's a lot of your role then is maintaining those relationships, partnerships, educating. Yeah. That's what you do.
Constant. Yeah. So I probably, like most people in nonprofits, you're doing a lot of things, whether that is, I do therapy as well, which is like near and dear to my heart, but then supervision. And then also, networking, connecting with community programs, community leaders, making sure that people know this is who we are and how we can help.
And once, like yesterday, you had a situation, you reach out to the victim. Mm-hmm. What's the turnaround? When do they get connected?
Yeah. So they can call hotline. Literally, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline. So crisis support is available all the time. But let's say someone calls and, there was a homicide call yesterday and the detective said, hey, I think this person really could use help. They were connected to the victim. We do a call. We talk about services, how we can help, which is advocacy. We can help people kind of navigate the system if there is that, right? So that doesn't mean they have to get a police report or police involvement, but sometimes there is. So we can help navigate that because sometimes law enforcement or the DA's office, right, they have their own focus. And so we're there strictly for the victim. Questions, how do we support you? We can go so you're not alone. But then the other piece is the counseling. Counseling is free. We serve ages 5 and up. And so the turnaround for counseling, if you were to call and say, yeah, I would love to set up a counseling intake, it's usually about 2 to 3 weeks to get that intake. And then once that intake goes, maybe another 5 days before you're assigned. So the turnaround is quick, especially because there's no red tape like insurance.
Right, or finances.
Or
That's
finances.
amazing.
You just come on board. Now, there may be times of the year where it might be a little bit longer, right? Like, and it's hard to say. So sometimes if there's a shift in clinicians, or if my team, if somebody leaves the job or whatever, those kind of things may make it longer. Certain times of the year, summer, surprisingly, can maybe be a little bit more of a prolonged list, right? It just sort of depends.
And how long can one continue to get services from you?
Yeah, so we can see children for up to a calendar year of free treatment, and it's trauma specific. Our clinicians are specifically trained in that area, so they can see kids up to a year. For adults, it's a little bit shorter term. We can do anywhere from 20 sessions. And then we can assess, like, let's say many times our clients have had multiple victimizations. And so we can see them for longer. People often come back to us, which is heartbreaking, but that's reality, right? If you're sexually assaulted 3 years ago and then we get another call and something else happens, you can access treatment again. So
why do you say that's not as uncommon as, I think I read somewhere, almost like the sitting duck syndrome?
It's very common. Yeah,
can you
very
talk a little
common.
bit about that?
Yeah. So I think it lends to certain vulnerabilities, right? Like there's certain populations that are higher risk. So those with intellectual disabilities, highest risk, right? Those that might be victimized once in childhood, it tends to, it's common for multiple sexual assaults to occur throughout a lifetime. Depending on where people live, socioeconomic status, all of those things can contribute certainly to victimization, and also, I think, dynamic of silence, right? When we talk about sexual assault versus something different like a burglary or a robbery, sexual assault, it's a lot of times depending on generation, right? We have folks that call us in their 60s and 70s and are just self-identifying as a victim. And I'm like, yeah, come on in for treatment.
It happened years ago. They just didn't want to
It could
speak
have happened 40 years ago. And let's say the news sparked something, or, typically it's something in the news. Sandusky was a big one, the Brett Kavanaugh elections, things like that certainly spark people to identify. And then you say, yeah, certainly we can provide free treatment. So again, there's no red tape of length of reporting. You can just come get treatment.
So what are some of the challenges? I would personally, or not really, but professionally, sure, what you doing this work, it seems so obviously so relevant, so important, but really intense.
Yeah, I think that probably, as you know, it's not built for everybody. I think that you have to have a good support system yourself, and you have to take really good care. And the term self-care, it's like, it can sort of be, I just think, what feeds you at home, and are you taking care of yourself there? Do you have a good support system? Like, I have a great family. I have a son that just like fills me up. I like to do yoga, take walks. So those kind of things, to me, and certainly faith, I think, plays a part in it. Like, if you have those areas, I think you're just better equipped to handle it. But certainly not to say, have I cried at the job? Have stories been taken with me from 12 years ago to now? Of course. But I think that's what makes a good clinician, a good social worker, right? We're not robots, we're humans. And that's, I think, what makes you good at what you do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, people that don't see you, but you can still see, hear, feel your passion for this work.
Totally.
You've been doing it for a while. Yeah. Can you share, I hate saying like a success story, but kind of, a victim that you saw work their way through it?
Yeah, I think It's different than, I think, what maybe people who aren't doing this work may realize. So a lot of times people will say like the justice system, like, a successful outcome. And I just don't think that's to be true. I call it the legal system because many times people don't find justice in that, or healing in that, or closure. People always say that. And I'm like, I haven't met any victim in all my time where it's like, I feel great.
The court was fantastic.
Right. Like it's
right.
over and that part is closed. It's like if your loved one was murdered, that's a silly statement. I think the successes may seem small, but for me, that's the most impact. If I see a child who, was sexually abused by a parent and she comes to me and she is quiet and bashful and can't make eye contact. We don't even speak the same language, right? There's all of these things. She doesn't know me. It's virtual, which you add that component. But 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, she's looking at me. She's smiling. She's engaged. Something like that doesn't seem big to me. It's like you can see like
literally watch that transformation.
Yeah, it's just the space of like, maybe she never felt heard or believed. And in this space, if I do nothing, clinically based in a specific modality or intervention, if she just knows I believe her and I see her, I mean, to me, there's like, that is like worth everything. Yeah. Right. And so I've gotten the privilege to have that many times.
Yeah.
And I think it's not because I'm done all of these trainings. It's really just, you can sit and witness and hold the space for someone. And like, of course I can do that.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And along those lines, so that's more of like a clinical example, which I appreciate. How about with regard to advocacy? If you can speak a little bit about that, your role in that. I believe you had to reschedule because you were going to court with somebody.
Yeah.
So what you do in that realm and maybe a example.
Sure. So, the court system itself too is not set up for victims. It's a justice system based on, offenders and rights. And I certainly understand that. But I think victims often, whether it's a sexual assault, a robbery, a shooting, a homicide, many times people have never walked into the courtroom, right? Have never walked into the courthouse. So first of all, you think, let's just even take it a step further. Where can I meet you so you don't have to walk in alone? Because if you think you have to go through security, where am I going? What if the offender's out on bail and they're roaming the courtroom, right? So just simple things like that. We will say, okay, why don't we meet you? Our office is great because it's right across the street. So oftentimes we'll just meet people right on the corner there. We'll walk together and we can go to court with someone. And so what's the benefit of that? Well, if you think about it, right, the DA has a job to do at the table ahead, and the victim, hopefully they have support, but many times they might not, or they may not prefer to have people, right, to come, their family listen to information about a sexual assault. A lot of times that's what happens. So I can just sit beside someone, answer questions, remind them to breathe. You can hold their hand. You can make sure you have tissues. You can get up and leave with them if they need a minute. And so you're there in that space, but I think it's just attuning and being present with them, because everybody else has a job to do and they're focused externally, right? So my job is, how can I be present with this person? What do they need in the moment? So success stories, I think, again, sure, of course, if it's a guilty verdict and it's whatever sentence they would love, great. But I find even when those stories don't end that way, if a victim will say, I'm so glad that someone from Victim Services was just there to be present with me and to walk me out because I was scared, I was overwhelmed, I didn't know what to expect. So the advocacy piece is that, but also there is really powerful stories, and we help folks file for victims' compensation, which that's a financial reimbursement program for survivors, because the belief is you shouldn't have to come out of your own pocket if you're a victim of a crime. So you think about, we've helped people recover thousands and thousands of dollars of expenses. So for example, someone whose loved one was killed and they need to pay for a funeral. I don't know about you. Most people don't have an extra 10 grand in their account that they can just pay. So we can help people just file and get this reimbursed to them, right? So someone who is working to pay the bills, their loved one was killed, they put all their money out because they wanted to do a proper burial and pay respect to their loved one. We can just have the privilege of helping them fill out some paperwork, get paperwork where it needs to go, get the receipts in, and then they get reimbursed for that. It doesn't sound like a lot, but I'm telling you, the relief.
That's huge. Right.
And then people that have had to miss time from work, right? Because they have to take their kid to a hearing and they now are worried about the light bill. We can help with that, right? We can help with ongoing therapy in the future. We have a really good relationship with some other therapists that do long-term treatment, Spanish-speaking long-term treatment. That program can help pay $10,000 worth of expenses. These people that wouldn't have access in any other scenario, it's a simple, let me help you with this, but then there's so much relief that person can feel, right? Medical bills. There was a guy who we helped who was shot and as a result was a quadriplegic, I believe. You need home modifications, you need lifts, you need vans, you need all of this stuff that people don't have money for. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, plus the expense of the hospital bill. Well, if we can just help with getting you a shower where he can take a shower and feel human, of course, right?
So who does the money come from?
So it's the state has a fund. It's called the Crime Victims Fund. So if you ever been to court or heard about it, like where at a sentencing, someone will have to be assigned cost and fees, some of that will go to this fund. So each state has their own. So there may be millions of dollars in there that covers all victims in Pennsylvania. Certainly there's eligibility stuff, but it's helped people with home modifications, with medical bills, with therapy bills, with funeral expenses. I mean, you name it, they've been incredibly helpful. And if we can just make that seamless and easy, of course we'll
I would imagine victims don't even know. And if you're a victim, if you do know, how do you navigate it?
Exactly. Yeah. And if you're dealing with trauma after being sexually assaulted, let's take one thing off of your plate and I can easily do this,
So do your clinicians, your staff, I'm curious how many staff you have, and it sounds like you're all things to the victim. It's not just clinical.
Correct.
Case management, advocacy.
So we don't call it case management, but certainly, advocacy piece, right, is navigating the system, bills, all of that stuff. So we have, we're a small group, small but fierce. So we have 2 full-time advocates, and then I have 5 advocacy interns. Then I have 3 clinicians, and I have 5 counseling interns. So some are from like a PsyD program or a master's program. So we are small.
But mighty, clearly.
But mighty.
Yeah, because the wait time is so minimal.
Yeah, the wait time is great.
So you is that part of your responsibility, those connections with universities? And
absolutely.
You do that as part of your job.
Yeah.
That's why I always see you out and about.
I'm always trying to get dollars, get folks, get people, whatever it is. Yeah.
So have you seen changes with crime, certainly like media or whatever, 24/7, there's so much violence. Has it always been like that? We didn't see it, or it's...
I think that if I look over the last 18 years, and mind you, we see all of Montgomery County. So I would say there's themes in each specific town, but it's been pretty consistent. The one change, maybe the increase, is seniors with ID theft and fraud. I can't even tell you, probably hundreds of those every year. And that's not touching all of them by any means.
You help them with that?
Yeah.
At that point, I think they want their resources back, or they're not really looking for therapy, or that's an assumption.
Sometimes they will. Sometimes you'll hear a story where it's like a man who's elderly and hasn't told his wife that he's drained the whole savings to some sort of scam, right? And so he is navigating how I have no money left. I am holding this secret from my partner. And we're navigating, how can I recover any of this? So sometimes a situation like that, people might want therapy resources if it's trauma related, sure. But mostly we're seeing we can help. And again, situations like ID and theft, many times it's it's offenders that are in other countries, or you'll never get an arrest, right? I won't say never, but it's very far and few between. But we can, like, if there is someone arrested, we can help with the advocacy piece, which is really helpful for our seniors. But then I would say we can help with some financial recovery. It's specific and nuanced, but we can help those folks that might be on a fixed income. So if someone comes to me and says they lost $500,000, unfortunately, there might not be much we can do. But if you are on Social Security, on disability, if you get that $1,200 check every month and that's all you get, we can help in situations like that. So it's nuanced, but I'm always like, if you're a victim, come on and let me see what I can do.
Is that something you have seen a rise in then, you think?
Yes,
senior fraud?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're trying to be out at more senior fairs. We're trying to do some more training for this population specifically because they're just targeted for sure.
And in terms of violent crimes, pretty consistent? You haven't seen a spike?
I think it's consistent. I think you'll see dips in certain places, but it's been consistent, I think, my whole career, probably.
And what's your relationship with law enforcement after the fact? It's great. It sounds like clearly they support your organization, referring. That's great to be ongoing Has that always been in place to get the victim to sign off then so they don't have to make that call?
Yeah. So I think it's an ongoing relationship because you have 52 departments that have their own culture and their own incoming and outgoing staff, like every other organization, right? So it's constant training because there's new faces all the time.
Do you do that?
I will do that.
I should ask questions. What don't you do?
So I'll do some training for law enforcement.
Again, just like informational.
Really, the importance. Like I try to sell them on the importance of your patrol guys getting them connected to us and filling that form. Why is it so important? And if you can sell them on the why, it's great. That's usually the key because it's one other piece of paperwork. They have a million things to do. But for me, I'm like, it will limit probably calls that you have to do with this person. And if you think about it long term, you have a responsibility to be a part of the journey for these folks, right? And sometimes you might get them on that and sometimes not, but that's my social work part, right? Of like,
we're now working a lot more TLC with law enforcement. They're like, no psychobabble. I'm like, no psychobabble.
I'm like, just send them over and I'll take care of it. Yeah.
I know that we served together on the Chiefs board and that was how you show up and you don't do that in other places.
That was like a very unique, amazing.
It was,
thing that I don't just put together. It was incredible.
Yeah, it was a great experience. So after you educate kind of law enforcement, do you ever swing back like with particular victims?
Yeah. So oftentimes we are connecting with them for case updates, right? So let's say, there was a patrol person at a specific department who called and said, hey, I have this victim of sexual assault. I don't know if she's ready yet. So we did some conversation of how he can have conversations with her. Always reminder that we're here. Like we want to be empowering. So I don't want to push, but I also know you should ask more than once, right? That's just what I know. Because a day after a crime versus 2 months after a crime, people are in different spaces and maybe ready to pursue healing, pursue services, whatever that may be. We'll circle back throughout the case. Oftentimes we'll be doing that. Just how we can support the victim. What does the victim need? The victim also probably, if they're involved with the system, we're going to do prep with them, right? We don't do it ourselves, but we'll provide support if the officer,
what
if
kind
the
of prep?
detective,
For court?
if there's a court case. Yeah. Okay. So the DA's office typically will prep them in what to expect, what's going to be the outlier, what's going to be the courtroom, what does it look like, what are we going to expect, how is it going to kind of feel and be? And so advocates can be a part of that. So victims feel like there's that emotional support, right? They have DAs and police have a very specific task and role, and ours is just, what do you need emotionally? What can we do?
And you've obviously made inroads. Like, would you really need to be here? Why are you here? What's your point? So it sounds like you have all your years are embedded in these other organizations or systems that value your organization.
I would hope so. Yeah.
Do you work a lot with the DA's office as well?
Yeah. Yeah. So again, it's changing faces too. So it's like constant kind of having to explain who you are and what the benefit is. but you have sort of the chiefs and those folks that know us pretty well, and they'll refer and say, yeah, go here, or we need you. Can you send someone over? And we help in that way.
So when you're in the courtroom, I know I'm getting the weeds, but I find it so interesting, curious. Are you literally sitting, I've been in the courtroom, like sitting at the table with or you can't sit up front and hold their hand?
We don't sit. Yeah. It's usually like the DA and maybe the detective or the officer.
You're right behind.
We're right behind. We'll be, if the victim is just sitting in the space, we're next to them. Sometimes they'll have to sort of be sequestered out and maybe in a different room, and we can be with them there. It's really whatever the victim prefers us to do.
And over the 18 years, you're saying the crimes haven't changed too much except for the elderly.
Yeah.
Can you, and you've done some great things, the virtual group, so we've highlighted a lot, but is there anything else you can think of or something that really kind of proud of, an initiative or a gap that you saw and filled?
We are a family because we are small. And a lot of the higher ups have been there for 18, 25 years, right? So there's people there that we're a family. So I would say that there's been a lot of stuff that I've been really proud of to be a part of, whether that is really pushing language access and why that's important for law enforcement, for the DA's office, for other kind of community entities like victim services. And that's really with the staff, right? The staff saw, hey, victims that are non-English speakers are not getting the same type of treatment nor service, and that's a problem. And so victim services really, to me, I think the whole team pushed that initiative to make sure our law enforcement friends, our court friends, like that's not a question, right? That's a part of their civil rights. And so we've really been, I would say, leading trainings on that. That's been something I've been really proud of, because we see a variety of folks that are victimized that have so many barriers in itself. We don't want reporting crime, access to treatment, even getting a paper from a court or a paper from a police department not in your native language. Things that we don't think of as privileged English speakers, right? Like they can't even read what the paper says, where they have to go, what is it for? Why people come to us and ring the doorbell and just say, I don't know what this says. So we've saw that need. And I think the victim service team has been really, I've been very proud to be a part of that team.
But what does that look like then? I mean, how are you?
So we meet with many folks in the system itself, and we just provide education about, you have these language line.
That's what I was saying. I was wondering, so is it language line? Is it Google Translate? What tools are you giving
Police departments have access. I don't know if it's through the county budget. I'm not quite sure where the funding comes, but every police department has access. So if someone comes into the department, you don't have to wait for an officer who speaks that language. And oftentimes, if it's Arabic, if it's Korean, like you may not have someone in your department that speaks that language. Some departments, were not fully aware that you have access to this language line to make sure that you're not using children to interpret or come back later. What if it's a crisis? So just giving that piece of information, working with the court. Now the court in Montgomery County, they have a language access person who's been great, making sure documents are translated, making sure there's folks that are able to use video. So if you think of ASL, people that are deaf, you can't use a telephone. You need a video. So how can we ensure that if victims are coming in to file protection orders, sexual violence protection orders, how can we make sure that folks aren't turned away because, oh, sorry, we don't know what to do? Let's all be on the same page and figure that out. So I've been very proud to be at those tables with those conversations to make sure there's always going to be work to be done in that area, but to make sure that victims have access to every protection under the sun.
So ongoing project.
I will think it will be consistent and ongoing. Yeah, absolutely.
I know it's a lot of order. I'm curious. So when the officer gives your information, when there's a victim of a crime, you guys do the outreach. How soon after? Is it the next day, 2 days? So
depending on the crime, like if it's a homicide, I may give it, a day or two, but also you want to get in because people are planning a service typically, or what am I going to do to bury, right? So certain crimes, there's we got to get in because we have services that can help right in this moment. Other crimes, it might be 3 or 4 days later. So if it's an ID theft that happened last week, like, okay, we may take a couple days to get back to that person because the urgency might not be as great than if it's like a crime where someone needs access to funding now, and we don't, I just always want to be clear. We don't have the funding. People sometimes are like, oh,
where's the money?
No, we don't. Trust me, we need the funding. We don't have it. But we can connect them to programs that can get those things paid for quicker.
And what's the percentage that get your call and say, yes, thank you? Do you have people that say, no, thank you?
Yeah, we do.
Many?
I would say it's more, we get more out of it if we do a direct outreach than if someone says, oh, just give victim services a call. People are going to forget. People are traumatized. That's why I'm like, give us their number. And if they give permission, we can explain it in a way.
Hence the circle of teaching law enforcement. If you sign this paper and you get it signed and you're proactive, do most engage then at that point?
Yes.
Would you say 50-50?
I would say yes, absolutely.
More than 50-50.
Yeah, I would say. So, if you're just saying like I think the law is they have to give the booklet. And I'm like, great. But that puts responsibility on the victim to do the outreach or to remember where they put the booklet. Right. Yeah. If you're raped, you're not going to remember what you said to me that moment in this crisis situation. So just allow me to call them. And we do 2 calls. We will send follow-up information. So it's like we're trying to get to the victim where and when it's appropriate for them. So it might be a phone call the next day. It might be they get a letter in a week and they're like, you know what, maybe I should call now. Yeah.
You may have answered this question, or maybe you have another thought. In the Lincoln Center, we have a motto of like the butterfly effect, being transformational. One moment, one person, one choice, one connection can be transformational.
Yeah.
You did mention the teacher.
Yeah.
I don't know if that would be your moment, or if you think of something else, or while you're thinking why that teacher inspired you.
I would say that probably there's quite a few over my career, but I always go back to, I'm telling you, that woman that we had an assignment in the 7th grade and they said, interview a classmate's parent about something you think is great. It was something you might want to pursue. I never forget her name. I never forget what she said, where she worked. She did foster care. She was a woman that showed empathy, compassion. She was loving. She was kind. And I'm telling you that when I met with her in that 7th grade class project, I was like, yeah, that's totally
and
exactly
that's who you are.
It's what I want to do.
Yeah,
So I should reach out to her because I still see her son. I should tell her because I think people don't know, right, the level of impact that you have. And so sometimes maybe that would be like, bring her a smile. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is palpable, your enthusiasm still for this work. That's such hard work. And that's because of?
Probably, most people in the field of victim services have their own connection, whether they were a victim of a crime, they knew someone that was a victim of a crime. I think that's very true for me, right? Having my own experience.
Before you got into this work.
Yeah, before I got into it. And just knowing what was available, what was helpful and what wasn't, I think that was like purpose for me, right? So you also realize being in their shoes, and certainly it's not about me at all in the moment in my career now, and I'm very clear about that, but I think what I received in free therapy as a kid, what I received in free therapy as an adult, because being connected to some sort of victim of a crime, that wasn't lost on me. And those people like left lasting impressions of like, these are social workers, these are people that want to help kids and adults impacted by crime. And just it organically, or I believe divinely, just sort of lined up for me of like this position was open, and I went through my own journey, and I'm like, okay, I believe that I was ready, and here I am. And I think that there's empathy and compassion that most people can feel, but if you've experienced or have seen victims of homicide, how that's impacted victims of sexual violence, and it's like, yeah, why would you not want to show up for people? It's not, I don't feel tired. I don't feel,
Clearly.
I don't, right? It's like, I just
But
feel.
I appreciate you sharing that. I wasn't aware. So you had an organization as a victim that, fortunately, right? So
Absolutely.
You know what that's like to experience.
Totally. And I just think, it's not there was a Bucks County agency and a Philadelphia agency that sort of like were great for me. And so I'm like, this is perfect.
I've so enjoyed this conversation. We're usually passing. I don't know. Is there anything you want to share that I didn't ask?
I mean, just check out Victim Services. And if you're interested in volunteering, of course, my boss would say volunteering, donating your time, donating funds, all of that. I mean, we do free service. And so we're trying to diversify funding. And so we need folks, we need the community to help. So that would be my selling point.
Erin, thank you again so much. It's been just great getting to see you and
too.
talk to you again and learn more about Victim Services more than I knew. I've referred people there, but I never really knew exactly what you guys, I mean, I had the general idea. Yeah. Very helpful. So thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
TLC Connections is supported in part by the Lincoln Center for Family and Youth through education, counseling, coaching, and consulting. We empower people to make positive choices, meaningful connections, and transformational change. To learn more, visit thelincolncenter.com.